Agnes is at a job interview where she lists down the reasons why she should be hired. She possesses an experience of 10 years, loves the restaurant business, and is passionate about every aspect of his job. But her employer, Gerard, requires more from her. In order to work at Breakup Blue, she must deliver her attention as perfect service means always being one step ahead. She adds that she's a fast learner, dependable, thorough, and a team player. She believes that she got these qualities from her mom, whose cooking is the best according to her. Gerard shows her around the place and leads her to the busy kitchen where he pinpoints her to the people she will be working with. Then, he brings her out to the restaurant where people are seated. He states that his staff is like an army that must be victorious night after night. He welcomes her at the Breakup Blue, where there is no room for mistakes to be made. She thought that she was being hired as a waitress, but he hands her a brush to clean the toilet. Month after month, she progresses from bathroom duty to washing the dishes to opening wine bottles to cleaning out the driveway. Gerard keeps an eye on every little task happening in this place to make sure that everything is up to his exceptionally high standards. Agnes finally makes it to the waitress position after 6 months have passed, during which she's been living with her rockstar boyfriend. She has blended into her role quite well, as she sometimes prevents the kitchen staff from making stupid mistakes. The chef, Cal, calls out to her one day because he wants her to try out a dish that he's been experimenting with. Gerard doesn't know about it because he isn't a fan of innovation, so they must be discreet about this. When she tastes the dish, she points out that it's too tangy and can use some arrowroot. He is both surprised and impressed by her old, but helpful home cooking tricks. Gerard walks in and cruelly throws out a waitress just because she has a mild rash on her face. He entrusts Agnes to serve table 9, which is the top priority for tonight. It seats Lola, a famous food critic, which is actually a pseudonym used by a man. Agnes is still surprised at the fact that Lola is a man, but Gerard is sure about it because he was tipped off. Agnes watches the man from the kitchen when Gerard hands her one of their best bottles to serve him. She points out that this will make him suspicious, as they don't usually treat customers to such fine wines. Gerard directs her to walk past him with this expensive bottle to make sure that he sees it, and also commands her to open a few buttons of her shirt because she looks like a nun. She can't believe her ears when he shamelessly instructs her to perk up her breasts, which is when she throws up her hands in protest. To her dismay, they knock the expensive bottle right off his hands, sending it flying into the air. Gerard runs after the bottle as it falls into an open flame, which causes his luscious mustache to catch fire. Agnes gets a hold of a fire extinguisher as Gerard's sleeve is on fire too. Yet he manages to throw the bottle away from the stove, but it ends up falling on the floor and breaking. Unable to handle the fire extinguisher, Agnes resorts to using a cake to extinguish the flame on his arm. All the people who had been enjoying a nice dinner until now are alarmed when a burnt Gerard emerges from the kitchen, with a distraught expression, and cake smeared all over him. It is no surprise that Agnes is fired from her job that night, and she runs to her boyfriend, Tobias, to seek comfort. He's at the bar where he performs most nights. She clings to him, requesting him to come home early tonight so that they can cuddle. He backs away from her kiss and refuses her offer because he has a new girlfriend named Ida now. Agnes steals a glance at how different and voluminous Ida's body is in comparison to her, as Tobias dumps her. Agnes rushes back home and is in tears as she tears the calendar, which has her and Tobias' pictures all over it. When her friend, Lucien, finds out about her breakup, she's relieved because this might actually be good for Agnes. To her, Tobias is a parasite, and she believes that Agnes should sit down and let her feelings out. Agnes tears up eating the dinner she just cooked, admitting that she feels lost if she doesn't have someone to take care of. Lucien points out that Agnes can take care of herself for a change, but she can't focus on anything because everything reminds her of her ex. Lucien laughs at Agnes' frantic crying and decides that tonight is a girls' night. They go out to a bar where Lucien checks out guys and wants Agnes to do the same too. But all Agnes does is drink until she's wasted and contemplates calling Tobias. Lucien stops her from doing so and sends her home in a taxi because she has found someone to hook up with. Agnes drunkenly walks up the stairs and tries to open the keys to what she thinks is her apartment. She staggers and falls to the floor, still struggling to insert the key in the lock. Meanwhile, the food critic wakes up inside as it's his apartment. He realizes that his dog is going to be no help with this intruder, so he cautiously opens the door to find Agnes outside. She's about to walk in when he stops her, trying to explain that this isn't her apartment. He puts on his slippers to give her a hand and lead her to her apartment, but she recognizes him from the restaurant. He carries her to her apartment on the 3rd floor, where she falls on the floor. He checks to see if she's okay while she's laughing on the floor, making fun of his feet. He tucks her into her bed while she mumbles in her sleep. He smiles and says goodbye to her before leaving. The next morning, she is woken up by a song Tobias wrote and sang for her as it's her caller ringtone. She figures out that one of her neighbors brought her in last night and checks the building's documents to learn that the guy's name is David Kummel. She later visits her parents at their house, and they joke about not recognizing her because of how rarely she visits them. She brings out an old scrapbook of her that she calls Love and Lemons. It has memorabilia of her life as well as nostalgic recipes, one of which she is cooking tonight. Her mother continues to teach her how to cook properly as they work in the kitchen together. But still, her techniques aren't as fine as her mother, who's glad that she failed, otherwise she wouldn't have visited today. Her mother, Maud, is cooking her signature dish called the fish surprise, when her husband, Sven, walks into the kitchen because of how good it smells. He shows Agnes his new smart printer, which prints out an image of the new camper he just bought. Agnes finds out that her parents bought the camper from the money that they've been saving up for years, and they no longer want to live simply. They plan to go to Italy to explore, and Agnes congratulates them. Sven seems to be in heaven as soon as he takes the first bite out of the food they cooked. After lunch, they play a game where Agnes and Maud guess the ingredients of every dish within 20 seconds. Sven does the dishes, while Agnes gets a call from an unknown number on her phone. It's a stranger who claims that this is her destiny calling and asks her to meet at 2 p.m. in Nightorget tomorrow. Agnes shows up there with Lusson, who has brought pepper spray for their protection. The mysterious man approaches them from behind, and Lusson is about to attack him when Agnes identifies him as Cal. It turns out that he has quit his job because it wasn't creative enough for him. Gerard was furious because no one has walked out on him before, but Cal wants to open his own place. He has found the perfect location for his restaurant called Ruderswerd. The site is still under condition, and they meet Cal's wife, Pernilla, there. She is responsible for bringing the place back into shape, and it requires more work than they initially anticipated. Cal explains that he is striving for quality here as he plans to use the best organic fair trade ingredients, with which he'll create innovative and diverse dishes. Agnes likes this idea and is offered a position to join this venture. She'll take care of the customers and he'll handle food, which makes a great team. Agnes accepts the offer and wants to know when he'll open. That's when he reveals that he and his wife have poured all their savings into this, and have taken loans to the max too. But they're still short on funds, so they're looking for a partner who will also invest with them. Agnes is surprised to see that he wants her to invest 800,000 kroner to be a partner in this restaurant. She later runs this by Maud, who thinks she should go ahead with this because she has always wanted to open her own restaurant. Maud wants Agnes to jump into this right now, and since no bank will give her a loan, she and Sven will lend her the money. Agnes doesn't want her parents to cancel their trip, but they're happy to help her have a shot at her dream. Maud makes it clear that Agnes shouldn't put her dreams on hold regardless of whether she feels ready or not. Lusson and Agnes watch Tobias' new song on TV, where he bashes her and has Ida in his music video. This fuels her to prove herself and become way more successful than he is. Agnes signs the paperwork with Cal and discovers that Maud is loaning her the money by going behind Sven's back. She'll tell him at the right time, but right now, he's way too excited about the trip and will be disappointed if it gets postponed. Agnes is later introduced to another chef coming in at the restaurant called Paolo. He is handsome and charming and helps them add the finishing touches to the place. Cal explains that fine restaurants don't advertise, so they need write-ups from food bloggers, magazines, and critics to bring in customers. This reminds Agnes of Lola, whose real name is David, and he lives in her building. Cal and Pernilla are overjoyed to hear this. Since David doesn't know about Agnes's job, they want her to bring him here. She thinks that it's wrong to trick someone into coming to such a fine restaurant. This opens Cal's eyes and decides to let things be. It is opening night at the restaurant and everything is going well. Sven shows up and Agnes welcomes him in, only to discover that Maud won't be coming because she wants her to properly start off before she gives her true opinions. Agnes and her friends celebrate their success by going out later that night. There, Lusson declares that she is bored with the real estate business and is open to working other jobs now. Agnes knows that this probably has something to do with the blunder she caused at her office party, which is what is driving her sudden career change. She explicitly hits on Paolo, but later gives Agnes the permission to hook up with him. Lusson conveys that it's time for Agnes to move on from Tobias, but she sadly still blames herself for not giving him enough attention. This attitude makes Lusson furious at her self-deprecating friend, so she drags her to Paolo. But Lusson accidentally makes an insensitive joke, which seems to offend Paolo, so she escapes from there, leaving him and Agnes behind. That's when they start laughing at her awkward exit and Paolo asks to share a cab with her, even though he lives quite far from her. She feels nervous when they hook up that night because she feels like she's cheating on a partner she isn't with right now. She reminds herself that she is free to do whatever she wants, but still can't get intimate with him. She awkwardly leaves his place, knowing the fact that they'll have to see each other every day because of the restaurant. It is early morning by the time her cab gets her to her building. There, she runs into David, who is walking his dog Kafka. They say hi to each other and she tries to explain that she has been working through the night so he doesn't get any wrong ideas about her. The next day, it is their first night of serving customers regularly and she gives the whole crew a shy pep talk. She and Pernilla stand by the doors, waiting to serve guests, but no one shows up. The food gets wasted that night and it seems like they're headed for failure. They regret not marketing their business properly now and must resort to tricking David. Agnes shows up at David's house randomly with pie in her hand to thank him for being so kind that night. She follows this by inviting him up to her apartment so that they can have some coffee together. So he hands her back the pie and tells her to wait upstairs as he'll see her in a while after feeding Kafka. Agnes takes this time to tidy up her apartment while he utilizes this time to fix his appearance. Agnes hears the doorbell ring and answers it only to discover Tobias on the other side. He is dropped by unexpectedly to pick up some stuff and wants to know if he's interrupting something. She immediately falls for his sweet talking and invites him in. He helps himself to the lemon pie she baked for David while she finds David at her doorstep. She takes a rain check on him, but he can hear Tobias praising the pie from inside her apartment. He's about to say something when she abruptly shuts the door in his face and comes back inside to sit with Tobias. He rants about all his problems and she empathizes with him. They end up sleeping together and she is happy that they are back together. This isn't the case for Tobias, who doesn't want any labels for this situationship. He gaslights her into believing that she messed up the good thing they had going and Lussan reprimands her later for it. Paolo walks in and Lussan acts strange around him, which shows that she has a crush on him. Agnes teases her for it and tells her that she can have him. Lussan motivates her to improve the situation of her restaurant because it's truly good. So she wakes up early the next morning and hides in a bush that's on the path where David runs with Kafka. But Kafka finds her stuck in the bushes and she lies that she was out for a run too. He notices that her foot is stuck in the bush, so he helps rescue her, but she accidentally kicks his eye instead. He winces in pain and she takes him to the doctor, where they're told that the contact in his eye migrated. The doctor can't find it now, but it's somewhere inside his eye, which horrifies Agnes. They finally sit down and talk about how all their meetings have been weird and disastrous. She gives him an explanation of why she bailed on him earlier as her ex showed up out of nowhere. She asks him out to her restaurant without telling him that she works there, claiming that she wants to treat him to dinner to make up for all the trouble she has caused him. But he is still dizzy after his shot and unable to go out right now, so she decides to make him supper. She heats up the leftovers of Maud's fish surprise for him and mentions that it's her mother's signature dish. They marvel at its taste together when they sit down to eat, and she accepts that she can't perfect it like her mother. He replies that the secret ingredient might be love, but cooking is very technical for her. He goes on to say that chefs sometimes lack in making some dishes because they have some issues in their lives that materialize and sabotage their food. She smiles at his unique outlook. The day he's about to come to the restaurant, she feels guilty for taking advantage of him and tries to justify her actions. Lussan teaches her that there is nothing wrong with boosting your odds and she can add to the effect by looking sexy to him. When they walk out, they see that Pernilla has already gone out to attend her karate classes, which means that they need a waitress. Paolo also checks his phone to look for a waitress when Lussan volunteers her services because she has some experience waiting tables. Agnes anxiously waits at her table when David walks in and hugs her before sitting down with her. They start to chat when Lussan brings them some champagne. She fails to pour the champagne properly into glasses and can't answer the basic question David asks her about an item on the menu. Sometime later, she brings out their dishes, which David likes. He confesses that he's on an online dating site where he was emailing a girl, but he broke things off with her after meeting Agnes because he doesn't want to betray her trust or let her down. His honesty makes her panic and she goes into the kitchen to tell the others that she can't carry on like this. They manage to convince her by reminding her everything that is at stake here, including her parents' life savings. Agnes and David's dinner goes well, after which, they spend some more time together. She is about to come clean to him when Sven calls her. Maud has been sick for months and Agnes promises her that she'll get to go on her trip. She is now under more pressure to make the restaurant succeed and hides in the kitchen when David returns to the restaurant one day. She's glad that this time he came on his own and likes watching him enjoy his dinner. She later shows Maud the pictures of her restaurant when Sven happily delivers the news that the tumor found in Maud's body is benign and won't spread. They embrace each other and Sven wants to go on the trip as soon as possible. Tobias shows up randomly at Agnes's restaurant to serenade and ask her out. She joins him for dinner with some of his business people. There, she runs into Gerard, who taunts the initiative she took with Cal. She stumbles onto him again and this time she takes a stand for herself. But seeing Ida with Tobias at the dinner in her seat makes her realize that he's a two-timing idiot. She considers talking to David that night but decides against it. As she is about to pass his apartment by, he swings the door open and checks up on her because he hasn't seen her for a while. She breaks down into tears in front of him and opens up to him about how Tobias has treated her so far. He compassionately empathizes with her and encourages her to get rid of Tobias' stuff and move on for good. She thanks him and he gives her a warm hug. They lie in bed and talk and laugh the whole night. The next morning, she cooks him a delicious breakfast, waiting for him to return from his run with Kafka. That's when Lussan arrives at her place and shows her the newspaper which has their restaurant's review. The review says mostly bad things about the restaurant and Lussan feels like that this is unfair to Agnes, who had to suffer through a weirdo's company to get a good review. What she doesn't know is that David is standing right behind her and overhears their whole conversation. He seems really hurt that he got played and walks away from her as she begins to cry. Some days later, Agnes is back in her parents' house as her mother is back in her kitchen after getting a bit better. She is cooking her signature dish again and still hasn't told Sven about the money. Agnes is sorry for her restaurant being such a failure, but her mother motivates her to keep giving her best because she doesn't know the end results. They're cooking together when Maud collapses. They try to take her to the hospital, but it's already too late. At her funeral, Sven reads a diary entry from when they were honeymooning in Italy. He recalls that no matter what happened, life was wonderful with each other. He reads a poem that signifies their yearning to go to Italy once more, to relive that beautiful part of their life where love and lemons grew in abundance. Sven announces to Agnes that he is going on that trip all by himself, just like they planned, because it will help him hold on to her for a little longer. This is when Agnes has to tell him the truth about how all the money for that trip is gone, which she is deeply sorry for. She later goes to Cal and wants to know if she can get her dad's money back. Cal apologetically informs her that they lost everything they invested and owe money on top of that as well. But Gerard has made an offer to buy the place from them, which will be enough to settle the money they owe right now. Even then, they'll still lose everything they invested. Cal thinks that they should accept this offer because they won't have to declare bankruptcy then. The restaurant gets taken apart right in front of Agnes's eyes, and Gerard enjoys every second of it. Sven stops by one day and gives her the Love and Lemons scrapbook, as Maud would have wanted her to have it. Tobias comes over to her apartment even though he failed to show up at Maud's funeral. She lashes out at him and throws away the painting he liked out of her window. She wants him out of her life too and kicks him out. She realizes all the mistakes she made with her restaurant and shares the scrapbook with her team, which inspires them to come up with a new concept. Sven sells his house because he can't live there without Maud. They work tirelessly, and Agnes even invites David and his online girlfriend, Camilla, to the opening. Unfortunately, Cal, Paolo, and Pernilla fall sick on opening night because they ate something bad. Agnes steps in to save the day with Sven and Lussen's help to serve all the people swarming in their new homely restaurant. David brings Camilla, who sadly doesn't match his eating habits like Agnes. Gerard also comes and is surprised to see that the food he liked so much was cooked by Agnes. But she catches him peeing in their later and kicks him out. David helps her out and she channels her love into making fish surprise that wins everyone over, including a top critic. Agnes's night ends with a kiss full of love from David as she made the best of the lemons that life gave her.